Deep in the forests of North America, a creature is said to exist. A creature that people are encountering.
Seriously, look how big it is.
With far too many reports to ignore, there are elements of truth behind these accounts that mankind can no longer
It's
ignore.
created almost this obsession where I need to find out
Could a
more.
breeding population of large, upright, hairy hominids really exist in North America? Or is there something more paranormal at work here, deep in the woods? If just one footprint, one wood knock, or one howl was real, then man's understanding of primate evolution would be changed forever. Join Glenn Purcell and the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective as they delve further into the mysteries of Bigfoot and other paranormal phenomena through the eyes of witnesses, investigators, critics, and skeptics. Join us as we look to discover what lurks from behind tall trees.
Hi, welcome everybody. I see we have quite a few people watching as of right now. So I am super excited for tonight because the person we're interviewing tonight, Shane Corson, to me is like a big shot in Bigfoot. I know he probably doesn't feel that way, but I reluctantly was like, oh my gosh, he's never going to say yes to coming on here. And he did. So here we are. And I'm super excited. Hi, Griff, because I get to talk to Shane Corson tonight and you guys get to ask questions, which is fantastic. Remember to put all your questions in capital letters so that we don't miss them, because I will miss them. So without further ado, let's bring on Shane. Hi.
Hey, Gwen, thanks for having me on, and please, I'm definitely not a bigwig. I just really love talking about Sasquatch, and when I get invited, man, I love to talk about Sasquatch. So
I know it's awesome, isn't it?
It's awesome. So again, thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, thank you. I have not gotten to speak to you before, so I am going to apologize ahead of time if I'm asking you questions you get asked all the time. I have seen all of the documentaries that you've been in over the course of the last few years, and I think they're awesome. And I'll tell you what, people ask me all the time, where would you like to investigate? And I'm always like, oh my gosh, the Olympic Peninsula would be what? You know, what? Because it's just crazy out there from what I hear. And oh man, that's like one of my dream spots that I would love to go to. But how did you get started in all of this? Because this is not something that most normal people like. They don't do this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Scotland, and which is interested in cryptids and paleontology and stuff, and then eventually moved to the United States to the East County, San Diego area, and knew I was kind of I was in the state where Patterson-Gimlin was filmed, the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed, and I just started really, really heavily diving into the Sasquatch subject, the phenomenon, driving around Southern California, Northern California, and really immersing myself in nature and in the woods and hiking, exploring. And, eventually made my way up north to Oregon, lived there for many years. And now I'm here in Washington State. And now I'm involved with the Olympic Project. And so, it's been a journey, but it's been a great one. And not one that I ever thought I would actually get to really partake in, get to have, experiences and get to be around some of the, I would call them big wigs, or big, individuals that are really doing stuff out there. And so it's been a journey, it's been a ride, but it's been a very blessed one. I'm very fortunate. And I moved up to Washington State because I thought it would, honestly, and I had my wife's permission, obviously, because she came with me. But I think, this part of the country, we're kind of in the mecca of this phenomenon. There's so much going on. There's so many people seeing things that have, whether it's recent or in the past. And so it's just, it's been a journey, but it's been a great one. It's been a lot of fun.
Now, I was curious because in I don't remember which documentary it was, but one of the documentaries you were in had mentioned that the logging company that gave you permission to be on there, what is it that brought them to seek you out? Because that's not something that normally happens either.
No, no, not at all. So in 2015, May of 2015, there was a timber surveyor out marking a potential timber cut. So he's putting flags up in a remote area, and he's about 100 yards from a certain, this creek. They have to stay within 100 yards away because it's, they can't cut trees down in those areas. So, anyways, he'd been doing this for this company and other companies for 27 years, and while he was out on this trip back in May of 2015, he came across these large ground nests. He had never seen anything like in his life. He's been around bear, mountain lion, elk, you name it. He's seen just about everything out there, but he came across these ground nests, and it really intrigued him, but it also kind of freaked him out, and they looked kind of fresh at the time. So he actually backed out of there, got out of there, hiked out, and got a hold of the company owner and a few other people. He eventually got a hold of Derek Randalls, and Derek Randalls is the co-founder of the Olympic project, the project I'm with. And the reason he got a hold of Derek was because Derek by trade is a landscaper. He's a well-known landscaper up in Western Washington, and he had done some work for this timber surveyor 10 years prior. And this timber surveyor knew that Derek was not only lived here most of his life, he's an outdoorsman, a hunter, a guide, and was involved in Sasquatch. And so he thought, well, maybe Derek Randalls has seen something like this. This timber surveyor wasn't necessarily thinking Sasquatch or anything, but he thought they were very odd because he'd never come across anything like this in his travels. And so he got a hold of Derek Randalls and said, hey, I came across these really large ground nests. Hey, I'm going to bring out the owner of the company and a couple of DNR, Department of Natural Resource guys, and I want to invite you along and see if any of us can recognize this. What could have done these? And that's how we got brought in.
Wow. I thought it was intriguing because I couldn't imagine any company saying this. But when they said, we'll give you 10 years, I was like, what? Who does that? Because logging is a big business. And I was very taken back by, wow, somebody cares enough to say, you know what, we're going to give you 10 years to do this. And I would have died if somebody would have said that to me. But I mean, how did that, what brought them to that determination? Because I would have thought they would have just mowed it down and been done with it.
Yeah. So just for clarity, what they originally gave us was 5 years. Now it's been 10 years.
Okay.
But originally they gave us 5 years. They gave us a key to the gate, and they don't hand those out. You can't duplicate them. It's a very private key. It's gold. There's a lot of people who love keys like this for not even Sasquatch related. Just get back behind these gates, miles and miles and miles, just to get back there. And so we were very lucky to get a key to the gate for 5 years. And one of the reasons they were all intrigued, in fact, the timber owner of this property, and he owns a lot of property, he had an experience years ago, and his brother, who's also a part of the same company, had an experience down in Oregon while elk hunting. So he was intrigued, and he knew about the Olympic project, and he knew Derek Randalls. And so that's kind of the reason we were allowed to go in there. They're still curious about it. We still stay in contact with them. Now, one of the reasons they didn't log it or have not logged it yet is because they have a lot of property, and it's not a go-to spot. Okay. And also there's a lot of permits they need. And so it's kind of a battle to get all the permits they need because of this salmon bearing creek and all the tributaries off of this creek. And so I don't know how long we got. It could be a month. It could be another year. Who knows? And so, but going forward, that's kind of where we're at with that now, is just hoping that they may never log it, but of course they will at some point. Yeah.
So you're kind of just going by this day by day at this point.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, we'll get a lot of notice before they actually go in and log it because we have equipment out there. We have
Oh, okay.
SM4 bioacoustical recording units out there. We do have a few game cameras, not many out there, but it's the recording units, which are, the particular ones we have, they're upwards of $800. And so
Right.
we don't want those going down with the trees. And
No, that would not be good for business.
no.
No, not at all. Have you gotten anything significant out there? Like, is anything that really stood out to you that's like, oh my gosh?
Yeah, absolutely. The most recent, I would say, other than the original nest area that was discovered in tracks and hair and all that, and that was back in 2015, 2016. We were searching this area, and it's a huge area, and we still haven't covered all of it yet.
Oh, wow.
But from about tail end of 2015 to 2020, we're out there, and we were putting audio units out there. We did find some interesting tracks and stuff, but we didn't find any new nests. We found some that may have been older, but they weren't, maybe there were nests, maybe they weren't. And then 2020, Todd Hale of the Olympic Project and myself came across a brand new nest in the making. We heard the perpetrator out there walking around and almost got eyes on it, but it retreated down into a ravine and circled around behind us. Long story short, we never got eyes on it, but we have the audio, and we have later on we went back down there and we came across all these huckleberry breaks, which the nests are made of, just nothing but huckleberry. And we saw a nest being formulated, and then underneath the nest we found 14-inch tracks, multiple 14-inch tracks around the perimeter, a couple of hand impressions, and then we had more of this unknown or primate hair that's in these nests. So whatever was making that nest was there, and we, very close to coming across it. But besides that, what we like to do in this area is we don't like to be in the area year round. We
Right.
do kind of make a presence on the outskirts. We do go place audio units out there, and that's kind of our thing, is we place audio units out there that can record for 2 months or so, 2.5 months. And it's the least intrusive thing we can do in this area without us being out there all the time. And so we go back and change the SD cards, the batteries out of these SM4 units, and review the audio. And it, kind of tells us what's going on out there, and we get a lot of known animals, loads of known animals and whatnot. But then every so often we get that suspect stuff, as we call it, suspect, where you get powerful knocks, you get certain vocals, you get very heavy thuds or brush movement. That tells us that possibly, if it is Sasquatch related, that maybe they're back in the area, they're moving through there, and then we kind of make a game plan off of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have found quite a few unique things over the years. Right now, here we are in 2025, and so I've been out a few times because these nests, we do believe, are not made every year. We hypothesize that they're made every 4 to 5 years, if not maybe 6 years. We're not quite sure, but we're not finding them every year or every month or anything like that when we're out there actually avidly looking for evidence. But it seems to be like a 5-year roughly pattern. And so we're in that, 2020, now we're here in 2020, we're in that pattern now. And so we believe they're being made in the months of like the tail end of February through like mid-March or March in general. And so we're right now, this is the time of year we really hit that area hard. We pick up our audio units, review the audio, and kind of see what's going on in certain areas, and then go explore. We just hit the ground running.
Now, you say you think you're formulating that they're coming, these nests are being made like every 5 years.
Possibly, yeah.
Does that mean, do you think are they using them for the 5 years, or are they making them and then moving out and then maybe 5 years later coming back?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to answer. They're definitely not using them consistently. They're made for a season and a reason. They're made for a spell of time. No matter what's making them, let's just be clear about that. No matter what's making them, the way they were constructed and how the sheer amount of huckleberry that was collected not just in the surrounding area, but 30, 40 feet away and brought to this area. And multiple nests. We're not talking about one here. We're talking, like sometimes 7 in the same area made at the same time of different sizes. That they were probably, again, spitballing, as my cohort David Ellis always says, throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Right.
Is that we believe they were made, to be slept in, bedded in for at least a couple of days, if not longer, maybe a week, and then vacated. When that timber surveyor came into this area, they were vacated, by months.
Okay.
There was nothing in the area. He didn't scare anything off. The huckleberry was still green, but the huckleberry, even when snapped off or broken, will stay green for months.
Oh,
and
wow.
so that was our, once we eventually did experiments in huckleberry, snapping them off, even reconstructing a nest just for our own visual purposes and seeing how long it would take to make one and all that. We watched it decay over time, and it took months. So we surmised that the nest was probably made in February or March. And it's kind of, with this new discovery in 2020 by Todd Hale and I, it's kind of proven to be true that they're being made in that time frame, at least so far. Again, science and observation takes years and years and years and years, and you need patterns of predictability. And I believe we're getting there. It's not perfected yet.
Right.
And maybe we're wrong on a lot of things, and we're totally okay with that. But they were made for a spell of time, like I said, a reason, wherever that reason may be, and a season. And when these nests are being made, right now, there is a seasonal salmon creek down below these nests. And during certain times of the year, the salmon just stock up like crazy. It's like, if you watch a National Geographic video of Alaska and you see the salmon come, that's what it's like. There's just salmon everywhere coming up to spawn. They die, and there's carcasses everywhere. So there's a lot. It makes a lot of sense for me why these nests were on these off these ridges on these fingers, and they were 100 yards away from this seasonal salmon creek. So there's a lot that starts to make sense in your brain, regardless of what made them. And I do lean towards Sasquatch for a number of reasons. Stuff I stated earlier with the hand impressions, the foot impressions, the hair, the lack of bear scat. I'm a hunter, and I've been exploring northern, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana. I've seen loads of bear beds, loads of elk beds, you name it. These defy logic, and they do not match up with any known species here in North America. So it's really eye-opening, and that's honestly one of the main reasons I moved up to Washington State was because of these dang nests.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I should say, speaking of Bill Rigby, he asked if you had any of those recordings.
I do. We have loads of recordings. Chris Spencer of the Limit Project and David Ellis of the Limit Project. David, more so on the early part of the nest find. He was heavily involved in audio recording in this area and audio analysis. Chris has kind of taken over that because David Ellis lives quite a distance away. Chris Spencer's done a fantastic job with the SM4 units we're placing out there with Chris Spencer reviewing. I mean, when you record for, a month, 2 months, it's an incredible amount of audio to go over when you're recording from, say 5 or 6 at night till, 6 or 7 in the morning.
Right.
And so we have many recordings that have been visually vetted. And by visually vetted, I mean, when I first got into this and I placed a recorder out, I'd collect that recorder after the night was through or the day was through, and I would listen to it, right? I just listened to, oh, wow, that's interesting, or there's nothing going on. With Chris Spencer, and I delve in this, I'm not like a Chris Spencer or David Ellis, but they visually look at the audio on a spectrogram, like via programs like Audacity.
Yeah.
And everything has a voice signature, a voice footprint. And you can compare that visually to known animals or even people and see where it, if it matches up as a footprint or a signature to known stuff. And so we have what we don't call it Sasquatch sounds or this or that. We call it suspect because we did not see a Sasquatch hit a tree or throw a rock or whoop or whistle or yell. But it does not match any of the known animals in this area, let alone anywhere, quite honestly. And so we call it suspect, but we have many recordings, like a library of recordings. And then we also have a library of known animals. I think it's very important. A lot of people just want to record what they think is suspect or Sasquatch related. But it's good to have a library of known animals in specific areas.
Mhm.
You know, if you're a researcher or investigator, you know, we don't really ambulance chase anymore. They used to be the old way of doing things, you know, where there was a report here, you run over there. There's an encounter over here. We do that. We do that a little bit, but
Right.
mainly we're focused on our key areas where we get into these areas and we document everything. I mean, just everything, the seasons, the weather, the everything we can, we try to document in these areas. And Chris Spencer is fantastic at that. I mean, just really good at documentation. And Rebecca Ann Slick, his wife, who's also a part of the Lint Project, she's fantastic at documenting stuff. But we get to know all the known animals in that area.
Mhm.
And in fact, if you go to the lintproject.com, I think we still have up a spreadsheet, a small portfolio of some of the of what has been written up. And we worked with an individual called Squatcher Metrics. He's on Facebook. He's a Brit. He's been to the States many times, but by trade, he's a professional data analysis sort of guy. And he helped us put together the spreadsheets and go through the data. And there's a small sample of what we've come across on the Lint Project website that kind of showcases where we're at, what we're doing, and eventually that will be updated. But anyway, sorry to ramble.
No,
on.
you're fine. You're fine. I here in Pennsylvania I of course research here mostly, and I have a couple of research areas that are, I'm going to say, within 20 miles of my home. So, and I have also put out the recorder at nighttime and go back the next day and pick it up. And I know just even that little bit of time span, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is taking me forever. But I have heard some really bizarre, weird things that, like, I heard what sounded like a maraca in the middle of the night. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Like you, I am looking at the scat and I'm like, oh, that's deer scat, that's bear scat, that, you know, different things. But I got nothing for this. It was incredible. It just sounded like somebody was out there with like a dried gourd with the seeds in it, just shaking it around. And we were all dumbfounded. We were like, nobody has any idea what the hell that is. I have no idea.
Yeah. Interesting.
Maybe Bigfoot was having a party. I'm not sure, but it was very interesting. And we noted it that, okay, we have this weird sound. We don't know who it is, what it is, you know, anything, but we still noted it as suspect because I don't know what it is. But I find it funny that you also, the other thing that I like to do is note what's not there. Because sometimes it's about what you don't find that you should find. Like, you know, all different kinds of stuff. I did come across a guy who built a blind out of, it kind of looked like a teepee thing, like, you know, Bigfoot is suspected to make. And I was like, what the heck is this doing out here? And then I did find out that a hunter had built it for hunting.
A hunting blind,
He would sit in there, but to an average everyday Joe, they'd be like, oh, look, Bigfoot built a thing out here. And I'm like, you know.
That happens. Well, 2 points there. One, back to the data. We were talking about, documenting stuff, even when it doesn't happen.
Right.
That is so key. And that's a great point. So key. I think a lot of people fall into the trap of just documenting when stuff does happen, but just as important is documenting when stuff doesn't happen, because if you can do that in a specific area or multiple areas, but document that for years and years, maybe it'll show you a pattern. Like, okay, there's nothing going on this season, this month, but everything picks up, and, like I said, as a hunter, you that's kind of what you do. When the deer are moving through, or the elk or the bear, or the mountain lion, and you document that. I don't document
mentally. Yeah.
Mentally, I document that stuff when it comes to hunting, and I get really familiar with an area. but that's the same thing. And then to the point of like, that structure that was built, there's some weird structures out there. Don't get me wrong. I don't come across a whole lot. Usually what I come across is naturally made. It may look weird, but there's a pretty rational explanation. And then I come across, hunting blinds and areas where kids have gone through and done some weird stuff. But it's usually, for the most part, it's usually always next to a trail, whether it's, a couple feet off the trail or 100 yards off the trail. There's a man-made trail somewhere. And a lot of people find that weird. But having said that, there are some weird stuff out there, structure-wise, that, you can't really explain. But until you see a Sasquatch do that, again, put it in the suspect file. But as you had figured out, with your case, there was a hunter that did that. And I found that many, many times.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of things that I've noted over the years. Like I keep a logbook of the weird stuff that happens. And again, I've never seen Bigfoot do it, but I know that there's no other animal here that could do that same thing. So like we get the rocks thrown at us and I get the howls occasionally and, the other weird stuff. And I still mark it down. Like I still write it down. It's unexplainable. Is how I put it. It's unexplainable. I didn't see Bigfoot do it. Do I suspect that that's the case? Absolutely. But until he walks out of the woods and is like, hey, I threw that rock at you yesterday, I don't know for sure. And I can't say that that's what it is, but I still write down all of the weird, unexplainable stuff that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then day two, you can be like, okay, I know what didn't do that.
Right.
And so then you can start to I can't even say the word. You could put it in a box.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And so you can kind of put it in certain boxes. Okay, well, what throws rocks? Well, there's really only two things, in my opinion, which is Sasquatch and people. So if you can rule out people, you're kind of left with the Sasquatch. And I say that because, first of all, I know Sasquatch exists. That's not even a question for me. I'm 100% knower, whatever you want to call me. I don't care. But I don't claim to know everything Sasquatch does. But I do know people are capable of doing a lot of weird stuff in weird areas. So if you can rule out people, if you know, in fact, that it was, say a rock thrown or something like that, because, I've been around the country and I'm not saying anything about you, Glenn, or anything like that, but I know I've been around areas where people thought there was rocks being thrown and being a squirrel in a tree with acorns, or a raccoon was doing something weird, or there was a pileated woodpecker at a weird hour, which sounded like a knock, but it was actually a woodpecker. When you can verify that stuff's going on, and then, like I said, put it in a box and rule out everything else, well, then no matter what, you're left with like, okay, this is odd. This is strange. Yeah. This is not known behavior, let alone in this area. And that's when you start, really get your wheels spinning and you may be onto something, which is exciting.
I often say, and I've been saying it for a while, that I think when you approach research, when you're trying to do research, you should keep an open mind, because I think if you walk in with Bigfoot's alien or Bigfoot's this or Bigfoot's that, or even flesh and blood for that matter, I think you can miss things and discount things that are weird and unexplainable, and you just throw it to the wayside because it doesn't fit your narrative. And then some of that evidence could be lost because you're too busy having tunnel vision that you can't, package everything in a it doesn't even need to be a tight box, but I mean, just.
Yeah. Understood. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't, have you had an experience with a Bigfoot?
Oh yeah. One absolutely 100% for sure. And then, quite a few others, over the span of many years. So we're not talking like nightly, weekly, monthly, and sometimes not even yearly. No, what solidified the existence of Sasquatch for me was, an encounter I had in Mount Hood, when I lived down in Oregon. I moved to Oregon in 2008 and, did a lot of stuff out there, and never really had an experience until, or really came across anything amazing like footprints. I talked to a lot of witnesses, which were very compelling.
Right.
And so even at that time, whether, when I was in California, I was the same way when I moved to Oregon. I just thought it bettered my chances, but I was still kind of like 50-50. I thought the Patterson-Gimlin film was probably real, but 100%, I
Right.
couldn't say that. I couldn't say Paul Freeman's footage was 100%. I couldn't say that the people I was interviewing, they seemed very truthful and everything, but, maybe they misidentified something. Maybe that didn't happen or whatever have you. And then, but in 2011, August of 2011, a 2-night experience with 2 other friends of mine, campers, who were not really into Sasquatch. We had a 2-night experience, which accumulated, or eventually the second night, first night we had something marching around our camp, banging a rock. The second night, I actually unzipped my tent and got the view. Something that was about 7 to 7.5 feet tall, swaying back and forth behind a tree, hair covered, arm, fingers,
Wow.
and in the middle of the Mount Hood National Forest, in the middle of nowhere. It came back the second night, and I got to, it was 1:30 or 2 in the morning roughly. But our fire, I could see hair and all that. I couldn't make out a clear eyes or a face, but it was definitely there was no doubt in my head what I was looking at. Eventually, first I thought I was just looking at a monster, but then not having an experience like that ever in my life. I've been around black bear all over the place, especially up in Yosemite when I used to go backpacking, remote backpacking out there, and in Oregon and Washington, Idaho, Montana. This thing was 2-legged, had fingers, an arm, a head, a shoulders, big body, and I got solidified for me. Sasquatch was real then. So I went from kind of like a 50-50 to 100% there. And it really shaped everything I do now and put me on this path where, I would kind of delve into it and get out in the woods and do stuff. But once I had Sasquatch solidified for me, it really changed my life in a lot of ways, in a lot of good ways, but and put me in contact with the Olympic Project and other individuals. Because this is not I don't care who you are. And people have different reasons, but if you're in for the study and the data collection, all that, which I am, I'm not necessarily out to prove Sasquatch exists. I don't really care.
No.
I want to know more about them. If they get proven, then cool. If not, cool. But they are out there, and so I'm about data collection and just being, it's really, I feel very humbled and blessed to know that they absolutely are a real thing in the woods. I don't claim to know much about them other than they're absolutely a real thing.
Yeah. I never believed in Bigfoot prior to having my first sighting. And after that, I was like, I just went down this big rabbit hole because I've hunted my whole life in this area. And to see that creature walking across that cornfield, I was like, that is nothing I've ever seen before. I've seen bear, I've seen coyotes, foxes, snakes, everything. And this was something I couldn't put in any box. Like, and at the end of the day, I was like, there is only one thing left. And so, I mean, like you, it changed my life forever. Like, I will never look back on that, from before that and think, oh my gosh, my life was so boring, because it's so exciting now. I'm all over the place. I'm going all these places. I'm meeting all these people that I would have never met without Bigfoot. Yeah. Like I've developed this whole Bigfoot family that we, are fierce for each other. And I just love them. They're like more family to me than my own family, some of these people. And so I get what you say about it changing your life, because it really does change your life.
Yeah, I mean, it changes a lot of people's lives. If you look at, so some people, let's look at the vast majority of sightings. They happen by just average people that maybe are interested in the subject or have no idea or don't even believe in it. We're talking, what's the number one sighting, right? It's roadside crossings. People are driving. That makes sense. Just like animals, everything has to get from point A to point B. So there's going to be more people on the road, and there's probably going to be a Sasquatch occasionally crossing a road. So that makes sense. But then you get into around areas where there's houses or remote forests or whatever trails. And then you get just average people having these sightings, these experiences. It's very rare, in my opinion, that researchers or investigators, whatever you want to call us, or anybody that's actively pursuing this, enthusiasts. It's pretty rare. I mean, it's just not a common number where people, those individuals, even such as myself, are going to go out and have a sighting, let alone multiple sightings or something of that nature. It is average people doing average things, which makes way more sense to me because there's a lot more of those people out there.
Yes.
And so,
and like you said, they're just doing average everyday things. They're not looking for anything. It just happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, but when someone has that eye-opening, whether it's a hunter, a hiker, a driver, whatever have you, it really rocks your world, right? It rocks your world in ways that you're like, what am I looking at? You know, it just blows your mind. And I've talked to literally hundreds, and I know you probably have too, hundreds of witnesses over the years from multiple states that, and a lot of them, they never talk about it. They don't become a researcher or investigator. Nope. I've talked to hunters who were like, no, I never want to go back in the woods again. I didn't know this thing was out there, and I've been hunting here for 40, 50 years. And then boom. Or you just have, you know, your average fisherman or hiker or explorer, and they have that happen, and, you know, they either shut up about it or they tell somebody about it, or they maybe possibly get into what we do as investigators and researchers, enthusiasts. They pursue it. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on with, you know, an encounter. I mean, just look at something simple like, say you have someone out in the woods that's never come across a bear and they run into a bear. Well, they might tell people about it, but they may never go back to the woods again because they're like, oh, but the chances of running into a black bear in a lot of areas are pretty slim. And also that black, you know, most black bears, they know you're there and they take off running. So, but still you have that fear. And when you have something that's a known animal, right? Then you have something that's unknown, the psyche, the mind, the stuff that goes on. It does
really play with you. Yeah. Because I looked at this creature thinking, initially I thought it was a person. And then I was like, wait a minute, they're not wearing clothes. It's really big and it's all black. And I was like, is that a bear? Like, I'm staring at this thing walking and I'm like, it's not walking anything like a bear. Like, they have short legs. They take smaller steps. This thing was like walking like you and I are. And I'm like, literally, I went through the process of elimination and was like, nope, this is definitely not a damn bear. Like, absolutely not a bear. There's no way it could be a bear. And this is the only thing that's left at the end of the day. And my husband said, you're freaking crazy. Like, when I said, I think I saw a Bigfoot, he was like, you're crazy. There's no Bigfoots around here. They're all in Washington. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, I think I saw Bigfoot. And and then I've gotten over the years people who have come forward and said, the one guy called me that's just like 2 miles from me and said 10 years ago he was out hunting in game lands and saw a huge black Bigfoot walking towards my direction. So then I'm like, well, that was 10 years ago. Could we have seen the same individual? Could it be 10 years apart, but seeing the same individual Bigfoot that's walking that path, because he was walking in my direction at that time. And what I saw was walking away from me. So is he traveling from one area to another? And that's just when we're seeing him, or, you know? Yeah. There's correlation there. And that's fascinating too, just because like that individual talking about that supposedly saw that, you know, that black Sasquatch. I mean, probably didn't share it with a whole lot of people. If anybody, it took another experience for him to kind of probably open up about it, but it just shows not necessarily a pattern, but corroboration in that area of, okay, I'm not the only one. Right. And we saw roughly he described basically what I described. And I was like, geez, you know, there's a high probability that this is the same Sasquatch just years later. Yeah. And also, I mean, with that too, I mean, that's what you should expect is you shouldn't be the only one in that area to have ever seen anything. So it makes a lot of sense that there was, you know, and that's just one person that you know of that came forward or shared. Maybe there's others, maybe there's not, but that's what you would expect. Not just a solo occurrence. Right. And I've seen that happen over and over the years, where in certain areas, you know, one person will come out and then later on you hear of another one, or you'll find a report online. Even
30, 40 years back. And that's what you should expect. And that's what we're seeing. And it points towards, I don't care if you're a skeptic or a skeptic, it does point towards not
Something.
just, something, not misidentification when people can describe it so well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then over multiple years, different individuals describing the same dang thing. All right. Yeah.
I have a lot of people here in this area who call me crazy. I'm the crazy Bigfoot lady because I am not I don't really care if people call me crazy. I don't really care what people think of me. So I put myself out there. I saw what I saw, and nobody can take that away from me, right? I saw what I saw. And then straggling people started, emailing me or messaging me on Facebook or calling me and saying, hey, I've never told anybody this. It's been 20 years. And you're the first person I'm telling this to because everybody will think I'm crazy. So then I just kind of I jot them all down in a book. I mark them on a map and I try to figure out if there's some kind of pattern going on here, different times of the year. Is it different years? It's just, thank you, Michael Devaney. He says he doesn't think I'm crazy. If you took a survey around my area, all my neighbors would tell you I'm nuts because we live out in the country. And I mean, our neighbors they're not right next door and you have to yell to talk to somebody. But I mean, I'm constantly going, have you seen anything weird lately? Or have you heard anything strange? And they all go, no, Gwen.
Well, Pennsylvania has its history of it's one of the states I'm actually interested in. It's one of the few states I've not been to, but I'm very familiar with a lot of reports in those areas, and they got quite a history. But living where you described your area, people are kind of, for the most part, creatures of habits, right?
Yes.
We get up in the morning, we go to bed at night. It doesn't shock me that even people don't see as much as they just don't see things because we're creatures of habit.
Right.
And we're not the most observant species, I'll tell you. We like to be, we like to claim we are, but we are not. I do believe the Sasquatch has got us, our hands are tied behind our back when it comes to that sort of thing compared to a Sasquatch.
Yeah. What do you say when people, I don't know how you handle the crazy reports, but I get people that call me and say, Bigfoot has mind spoke me. He has a name. We have a clan, blah, blah. And I document it as one of those weird things. But again, I mean, I have never experienced it. So I can't say they're lying, right? I can just document their story and put it in a book. And at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never, it's so far out there and so crazy, the story that they give me, that I'm just like, oh, I don't know if they're crazy, if they're not crazy. Have you had those kind of experiences with people? With
people, yes. I've never had those experiences, but
no, me neither.
Absolutely. And like you said, I don't necessarily discount that. I kind of pack it to the side but I got to go back to not just my experiences, but the people I work with, and then outside of that, and the hundreds of witnesses over the years I've talked to have never described that. So that the mind speak, or those individuals that talk about it, it's very, in my experience, very minute. Because for me, everything right now shows that sound. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's a duck. Sasquatch right now, for everything that I've looked at in years, everything I've experienced, everything I've documented, and for the most part, most of the witnesses I've talked to over the years describe something that has a niche in its environment, where sometimes it'll raid a trash can, it'll eat roadkill, it'll defecate, it'll leave hair, it'll leave foot impressions, it maybe possibly makes nests. It's very natural. But with those individuals, I mean, I get those periodically, and I've not seen the correlation, and I always got to ask them, why do you believe it was a Sasquatch? Could it have been something else? I'm not discounting that you had that experience per se, but why do you lean? Because you're into Sasquatch, you now think, that's one of the issues I have with orbs. Now, people do see orbs, and I've never, the once or twice I think I've seen an orb. I proved that it wasn't an orb. It was a glowing mushroom in the woods from 100 yards away, or a train miles away that was happening to shine through. But people do see some orbs, and I know some people that swear by it. And so maybe they are seeing orbs, but why are they associating that with Sasquatch right off the bat? Because most of those people that see that stuff are out doing Sasquatch investigations, doing stuff at night, and they just put 2 and 2 together when they could be completely 2 different phenomena.
Right.
You know, maybe there's a correlation, maybe not, but the same thing with Mind Speak or the other stuff. But I again, I have to, until I experience that, just, look at a skeptic like, well, Sasquatch doesn't exist.
Right.
I have to see one or have that experience. Well, I get that. Why I'm the same way with that stuff. I grew up in Scotland, never had any of that happen. Grew up in, or spent a lot of time in California and Oregon, Washington, living and in the woods. I'm in the woods 3 to 4 days a week. I'm never at nighttime, daytime. I've never had any of that happen. And so I don't know. So I don't like poo-poo it. It doesn't right now for me have any relevance to what I'm doing. But, I'm not so closed-minded. I'm just not so open-minded. I let my brain fall out,
Yeah. Yeah. I've never had any of those particular encounters myself. Like I've never had the mind speak or anything like that. And frankly, if something did mind speak me, I don't know if I'd trust where it came from. So I would probably just be like, I don't know where that came from. I just don't know. But I still document them.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're few and far between. I'm not saying everybody I come in contact with is like, oh yeah, Bigfoot spoke to me, last week. But I'll document it. I'll write it down because it's all about correlation, right? You're trying to like match things up and do things. And if I get 20 people that say, oh yeah, Bigfoot mind speaks me, and it's all in one area, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to hang out in the woods. I want to see if Bigfoot mind speaks me, which probably isn't going to happen, but I wasn't there, right? That's what I always say. I wasn't there. I don't know if they're lying, if they're making it up. I wasn't there, but I will still go there and check it out if I can, if it's
sure.
Yeah. I'll take me out there. Show me where you were. What were you doing? Like, what were the conditions? I want to know everything about, because was it something else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you hear an owl?
Yeah.
What's
your involvement with Sasquatch beforehand and after and all that's the questions I would ask him. Well, why were you out here? What were you doing? What were you trying to do? It's just, yeah. But like you said, for me, those, even up here, where I research and the Lynn Project does, I can honestly say in none of those areas we've ever had anything like that happen to us, let alone interviewed anybody. We've interviewed witnesses that have had either a sighting or stuff thrown at them or heard knocks or howls and whatnot. And whether it's Sasquatch or not, other than a sighting, who knows? But it's all very, very, I wouldn't say mundane, but similar and nothing extravagant or paranormal, put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your take on Bigfoot? What do you think it is?
I hate that question. I really do.
I know.
I don't know. It's for what I believe. And when I say that, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not so arrogant to say I don't know anything. But no, for me, definitely it's a sort of primate. And people get butthurt. We're all primates. But people get butthurt when you call it a primate. I'm not saying it's a knuckle dragger, but I don't think they give enough credit to the known great apes. But it's a sort of primate. The hair we visually looked at and sent to different labs. It is primate hair. Mm-hmm. So, but where that falls in line and all that stuff, I don't know. So it's a sort of primate. I do believe it possibly makes nests periodically. But it's definitely very intelligent for its environment. And so I just kind of leave it there. As a hominin, a hominoid. I don't know. But it's a real living, breathing, terrestrial, in my opinion, entity that has a niche in its environment. And so other than that, I don't know. But it's definitely a sort of primate in my opinion. And wherever that falls and lies, doesn't mean it's dumb whatsoever. Obviously it's not.
Right.
Obviously it's not. I think the key to it is that they're just small in number. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but I think they're very small in number. They cover large areas. I
Mhm.
don't think I don't think they necessarily migrate. I think they're more transitory. They move from elevation to elevation, from food source to food source, but not. We're not talking thousands of miles. And it's
So you
more
don't
like
think they're going to Florida for the winter?
no, but I wouldn't blame them if they did.
I mean,
Yup.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. I'm right now tonight. I was kind of worried about this interview because we have a weird event going on here in about an hour and a half, where they're actually, we never have this happen, but they're calling for. This sounds more like Texas. They're calling for dime to golf ball size hail coming in with
Wow.
thunderstorms and possible tornadoes, and that never happens out here. And
That's
so I
crazy.
got my generator ready to go and all that stuff, but and my vehicle's covered up as much as I can. But that's a rare phenomenon up here, and like I said, I'm glad we did this recording now, because I think in
Yeah.
an hour or so I'm
Might
going to
be
be batting
different.
down the hatches, and it might be way
Yeah.
different.
I get that same question a lot from people. What do I think it is? And I just simply say, I don't know what it is. I
Yeah.
don't know how they do what they do. I don't know what it is. When I see one come beam down out of a spaceship, I will jump on board the alien theory. When I see one come out of a portal, I'll be like, okay, they're interdimensional. But until then, I refuse to camp in any camp because I just don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what they do. I don't know why they do it. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what their thinking is. I don't know what they're eating. I don't know what,
Yeah.
So I can't make a judgment.
Yeah. I basically just go off where my experiences, where the evidence has led me,
Mhm.
and the greater the witnesses, when I look at the vast majority of witnesses that I've spoken to over the years,
Mhm.
and driven to their houses, or talked to them on a phone, or met them at a conference that I'm speaking at, or whatever.
Yep.
And so everything right now for me points in the general direction that I think is the right direction. I could be wrong down the road, and
Right.
I'm totally okay with that. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't say that. I'd be a little disappointed, and I'll probably just jump out, because if I learn any of that other stuff that's claimed,
Yeah.
that's not where I'm at now. Definitely not even remotely close. But then I'm just out. I don't. Yeah, it's not even interesting to me anymore.
So in any of your vocals, I'm kind of curious because I've met Ron Moorhead on several occasions, and
Yeah.
he's a lovely person. He
Very
really
good.
is a
He
beautiful
used to live
person.
out here,
Yeah.
just down the road from me.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
Have you heard anything in these recordings that are anything similar to what he recorded in these Sierras?
So, funny story. In our main research area, the nest area as we call it, we had Ron Moorhead, and he, like I said, good friends with Ron Moorhead. He's been out to our Lint Project hub many times and hung out with him. And one day, Chris Spencer, I believe, we had just gotten some recordings, and Chris Spencer, it was either Chris Spencer or David Ellis, I forget. But these recordings that we brought up to our Lint Project hub when Ron Moorhead was up there were from our nest area, and we were playing them. And Ron Moorhead was up there, and he turned around and he thought we were playing his recordings.
Oh,
yeah, and it's not in length to the Sierra sounds. It's not that lengthy. It's a short little snippet that we recorded in the nest area. But he thought we were playing his recordings, and he turned around and goes, "Oh, you're playing the Sierra sounds." And we're like, "You're playing the Sierra sounds." No. Those actually were from the nest there, and he was blown away. He thought they were the same thing he recorded. And so I've never heard that in person, just
Right.
on some of our audio recordings from specifically the nest area. And then I've heard others, not from the Limit Project, but other individuals from elsewhere, solo investigators to groups that have recorded stuff that's similar. What Ron Moorhead has is, the longest recording of that, what they call samurai chatter. So we have recorded something similar. So it did resonate with me. It was very similar, shorter, different scenario. We weren't present for it and all that, but yeah. So, what do you do with that? I still put that in the suspect pile,
Right.
and but it's very interesting that we have something similar to what Ron recorded, and he heard it with his own ear and thought it was very similar.
And two different areas.
And completely, you're talking California to Washington.
Right. Right.
This stuff was in the Sierras, Northern California, and ours is in Western Washington, up in the Olympics. So,
Huh.
yeah,
That's incredible.
fascinating.
That is
correlation and whatnot. So, yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah.
I would love to play something and have Ron Moorhead go, "Oh, are you playing my things?" I'd be like,
Yeah, that's how similar it was. Like I said, that's how similar it was.
"Just put me to bed right now."
Shorter in version, but yeah. So it has been, replicated, recorded wise in different areas. Nothing to what on the same
What he had.
stature or what have, but similar. And so there's something to that then.
Right.
Something is doing this, and you can argue about what, but no one's been able to truly identify it now.
Right.
What's the biggest conundrum they say? I mean, the biggest argument against Ron Moorhead's recordings is that, well, it's either human, or it's not. And, Scott Nelson's done a lot of work on that. And so who knows? It's just very interesting.
It is very interesting. That is very interesting. I'm glad I asked that question.
I'm glad you did too.
That's pretty exciting, I think. I have not heard anything like that around here, but I also don't have the same kind of sound equipment you guys. I mean, I have a little voice recorder with a battery in it and an SD card that will die in, a short amount of time. It'll only last a couple of days, maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't have the recording capabilities that you guys have. Up months. That's insane. Yeah. That's insane to have months and months. I would not want to be the guy sifting through all that.
It is I'll tell you what, I thank God every day, because like people like Chris Spencer, like everybody in the Limb Project kind of has that are really
their little thing.
They have a niche, right? That's their thing. I'm pretty dang good at vetting audio and visually looking at it and stuff. It's just, honestly, I love capturing audio, but I hate going through it. It takes a special soul like a Chris Spencer or a David Ellis and Limb Project. And there's others. There's others outside of our project that I know do great audio work. What's his name out your way? Mongola Hala. That's his coin name on. He's amazing. And he's I think a former linguistic expert or something like that.
Wow.
But it takes a certain person, and then you just make your niche and you become so good at it. And Chris Spencer and, like I said, of the Limb Project, David Ellis, they're so good at it. Like, they can zoom through audio really quick visually because they're just looking for certain signatures, certain frequencies, and certain things, and zoom, and it goes by way quicker than listening, which I used to do. And
that's what I've done.
I did it for years.
Sit here and just listen.
Yeah, I did it for years, but the visual aspect to it, and then you can cut and you can put it in different color palettes, so you can look at the voice, signatures and recognition. It's a fascinating thing, and something if I know I have something, I'll do it. But if I have to spend, days and weeks looking at audio, I leave it up to those that are good at it and enjoy it, because I do not.
Yeah. I've put out, my girlfriend used to come here and we used to camp in my backyard. And I know how people feel about, we don't get Sasquatch activity like year round all the time. It's very, very sporadic. Yeah. You can go months or a year without absolutely nothing happening. But we have already camped out there and left voice recorders out all night long. And I've recorded giggles and conversation, but conversation like you and I are having. That I'm like, who in the hell is out here in these woods? Like, it's weird.
That's weird.
It's like a mimic, like they're mimicking voices. And I'm like, I don't understand what the hell that is. But as soon as I hear it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what is that? And then I get sidetracked and I never get to listen to the rest of the recording because I'm stuck on, and I'm not good at Audacity. So I don't know how to cut things out. And so I just write it down at 2.22. There's this sound. I gotta have somebody else figure it out for me because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Gwen. I used to poo-poo that sort of thing we were just talking about. I used to really throw shade at that. I was working with not just myself. David Ellis actually brought me in. I'm the only he brought me into this. There was a woman that lives relatively not too far away from me, but she saw Sasquatch and she was having a lot of weird stuff happening on her property, and she had bought this remote piece of property with a cabin on it that was vacant for like 4 or 5 years. And her husband works out of town. Like, he's gone for weeks on end. her and her husband were driving up the road. She saw a Sasquatch one day. I mean, and she used to work for National Geographic. She used, take photos. So she's very observant, really articulate. And anyway, she saw what she saw, and she wasn't into Bigfoot or anything. They just bought this property. Her husband's out of town, and they were having sporadic stuff happen on this property. What was really interesting was David Ellis, audio guru for the Inland Project. She got a hold of the Inland Project, got a hold of him, and he started putting audio on her property and then telling her how to, change batteries, SD cards, replace it, because we couldn't be there all the time, but save the SD cards. We'll review it later. Well, over a span of over a year, her husband would come home periodically. He'd be out of town, he'd come home, hang out, and a lot of the stuff would die down. But then when he would leave, it would pick back up. Mm-hmm. What was fascinating was they had 2 dogs. And I forget one of the dogs' names, but one of the dogs' names was Layla. Well, she's outside one day. Her husband's out of town, and she thought she heard her husband calling for the dog. It sounded almost like autistic, or not quite the same, but similar, like Layla. Mm-hmm. And she's like, my husband's not home. Who's calling my dog? So we got a lot of recordings from this property, and she eventually moved to Arizona. She got out of town. She couldn't handle it anymore. I mean, that property, I was really bummed because I don't know this property now, and it's private. So, but what was fascinating was it made my mind think that if that is a Sasquatch mimicking her husband while he's out of town, calling for the dog, and that's just one example, but that tells me just like a lot of, whether it's a human or a parrot or something, it takes a while to learn to mimic something. You have to be around that area for a while to hear that constantly. Oh, they're every night they would call for their dog. Layla, come inside, Layla, And then all of a sudden you hear that from the woods and your husband's not there. So that tells me possibly that if it is Sasquatch, it's hanging around there and listening, observing. You may not know it's there, but it picks up on that, and then it's kind of mimicking.
Yep.
And that's interesting. If that is a thing they do, if that's a possibility, but it opened my eyes that maybe they do that.
The one night in particular, I heard the giggle, like I heard it with my ear, and thought, oh, it's just her talking to her husband on the phone or something. And I rolled over and went back to sleep. And then in the morning when I got up, she was sitting around the fire, and she said, do you talk to your chickens? Because we have chickens. And I said, well, yeah, when I go out there, I'm like, hello, ladies, what are you doing? I throw them, food, stupid. It's stupid. But she said that she heard my voice come from the chicken coop at 5:30 in the morning. And it was saying, hello, ladies. So she thought I was awake, and she got up to talk to me, only I was sound asleep. And I was like, what? And I hadn't believed in Bigfoot that long. And we had the chickens longer than that. So to me, I'm like, well, if he's mimicking me talking to the chickens, then he had to have been around here for a lot longer, and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
So it was bizarre and weird.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes, even when it comes to audio recording in the woods, just because you don't capture a knock or a footfall or vocals or whatever have you, percussives, doesn't mean the Sasquatch aren't there. It just means they're not making noise, just like any other animal. I mean, I know in these areas there's bear and elk and deer and mountain lion and fox and skunk, you name it. They don't always make noise. It doesn't mean they're not there, but because usually they are. You just don't have any audio representation of them being there or visual. Doesn't mean they're not there. It just means you have not heard or seen them, or they're not making noise. So that's, when people go, oh yeah, there's nothing going on in this area, it's super quiet. And I'm like, well, you don't know that. You don't know. I mean, how can you know?
Yeah. See, I'm a paramedic. So I walk into a house. I've been trained to look at everything. We can back out of a house and I'll go, did you see that crack pipe on the table? And you'll be like, no. And because I was trained to be observant and pay attention to everything around me. So when I'm outside in the yard, I'm just doing the same thing. I'm like, I'm very aware of everything that's happening around me, what's going on. And then when I hear something out of place, I'm like, did you hear that? Like,
yeah.
And lately it's been owls. We have had owls going off all day, all night for like a week on end, like just nonstop, all day, all night, just one after another. It's like, I don't know if a whole group of owls moved in because it's multiple owls coming from different directions, but it's all day and all night. You can be sitting inside the house going, did you hear that owl outside? Like
Yeah, that's odd. I don't know I'm not really sure what type of owls you guys have out there. I mean, I know what's in my neck of the woods. I'm not sure what kind of owls you guys have out there or their behavior. But that's usually owls. I mean, they can make noise during the day, but it's
right. They're usually
rare.
nocturnal. Yeah,
usually nocturnal. Yeah.
Yeah, this will be for a week straight, every day, all day long, from morning to night, all night long, just hooting everywhere. And you're like, I don't know what's happening.
Well,
another one of those weird things. We've had owls all day today.
Yeah, but what you're describing now, I mean, you're being observant, and being observant. Observation is the absolute fundamental, the foundation of science. I mean, nobody was born a scientist, right? It took observation, viewing, and then test hypothesis, and then observation. So that's what people are like. Oh, the new catchphrase with the last couple of years now is like citizen scientists, right?
Yeah,
that's been a thing, and I've used it. I consider myself a wannabe citizen scientist,
right?
But then I go back to, okay, well, what do scientists do, or the original ones do, that taught everybody that goes to a university to become a professional? They had those original individuals were observers. So that is the foundation of science, and then just observe as much as you can, collect that data, observe, test hypotheses, come up with questions, and then move on from there. That is so, I mean, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of scientists out there that are doing that are not academic or credentialed.
Right. Absolutely. Because I often say, like in my presentations, when I speak somewhere, I'll tell people, listen, Jane Goodall is a great, I try to explain like the differences between real science and what we do. And I'm like, Jane Goodall had it easy, so to speak. She had a group of individuals that she could watch. And eventually she got integrated into their group. They trusted her. They were around her for a long time before they were like, oh, hey, this lady must not be that bad, right? We can let her get closer to us and we can interact with her. We don't have that same kind of, we can't go watch a clan of Sasquatch in the woods. It's just not going to happen.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe Jane Goodall at that time was not a scientist.
No. She kind of became one after the fact.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she was trying to prove her points, and she did a great job.
She did, and then she eventually became academic. But that's a perfect example as to exactly. Now she landed in a great situation and had just what an incredible woman for doing what she did, because primates can be brutal, but she did it, and she rewrote history.
She absolutely rewrote history. I'd love to sit down across the table from her and just have a nonchalant conversation. That would be amazing because she's just awesome. And what she was able to do and get accomplished was awesome. And I think we're all trying to kind of do that same thing, only we don't have the same conditions that she had. We can't go watch them. So
we're not funded.
No,
and not looking for funding. I'm just saying, in a lot of these circumstances, I don't know if it takes that, but it'd be nice, right? Imagine being at a young age, not having the work, and that's all you did. Not that you're going to necessarily get anything done, but you might if you're in the right area at the right time with the right equipment, the right whatever you need. And that's for those that are out to prove it, that's probably what it's going to take. I mean, we're not talking like a month or two; we're talking like years. Perfect example. A good friend of mine. That and of Amy Boo, right? With Project
I love Amy. Yes.
So she operates Project Zoo Book. I'm a part of that, and there's a zookeeper in our group that we brought out to the Pacific Northwest years ago to look at these nests, and he was blown away. But he told me a story which I just resonates with me, and so I always think about it, is that he had as a zookeeper, he had a colleague that went to Africa to study the cross river gorilla. And now cross river gorillas we know exist, but I think it was either 8 years or 10 years. It was either 8 years or 10 years while he was out there. He only had an 8-second sighting in that amount of time of the cross river gorilla. They'd find nests, they'd find scat. They knew how to kind of track them, but he only had 8 seconds, and it was either 8 or 10 years. I don't want to get it wrong. So it's one or the other. Either way, that's an incredible amount of time.
You're damn right.
Yeah. And that's a funded for something we know exists.
Right.
And so it just shows you that something that's small in number, that's adept to its environment, can be very hard to observe. And so I think about the Sasquatch in the same way.
Yes.
You know, and so I think people are like, oh, we live in North America, we should have proven this. But then you look at the Tapanuli orangutan discovered in 2017 in Sumatra, Indonesia, where the Western science said that the Tapanuli orangutan, or wasn't even called that at that time, that orangutan species, that the natives, the Aborigines, were like, oh yeah, it's there, and they're like, no, it can't be. We would have found it. And then in 2017, one of the greatest discoveries over the last 100 years proved that there was a new species of orangutan, 500 of them living in a remote area, doing just fine. Well, they're on the endangered species list now because they just found it, but they were there the whole time. The sound familiar? The Native Americans or the Aborigines were, oh yeah, they're there. But Western science, culture, no. And then they were proven to exist. 2017. So it is the same thing over and over again. And maybe one day Western or the world will be proven that, wrong, that, Sasquatch does exist. It's just small number, and who knows, but we shall see.
I get that at conferences, people will say to me, why haven't we found bones? And I'm like, listen, let me break this down for you. There roughly could be, if you look at different estimations, let's just say there's 5,000 Bigfoot out there in total.
Yeah.
There are billions of people. How many times do you fall over a dead body in the woods? What makes you think you're going to find the remains of one that when there's only 5,000 versus, we should be tripping over dead bodies everywhere with how many billions of people there are out there. How many times have you seen a snake skeleton in the woods or bear bones? And they're much more common than a Bigfoot. And I still haven't seen either one of those. So I'm like, I don't understand what people think they're going to find when we're out there.
Well, let alone identify a bone, right? Unless you have a skull or something, but identify a bone, Is there that many experts out there that when they come across a bone, like, oh, this is a weird bone or no, they pass it off as whatever. Literally elk or deer or, or it's in pieces. I can't speak for Pennsylvania, but up in, up here in the western part of the country, things dissolve pretty quick. The acidity in the ground, let alone just the animals that eat them. I love shed hunting. And I'm so sick of finding sheds that are almost gnawed down to nothing because of porcupine and rats and everything else that chews on them. So it's probably not that much different. And very good point. When you're talking about something that's smaller in number, what are the chances? People have come across bear bones in the woods. I know this.
Oh yeah.
I personally am not. I've never come across a cougar bone or skull or anything like that. I've come across deer and elk, which are prevalent. Like we're talking like big numbers, huge numbers compared to something like a bear, a mountain lion, or let alone a Sasquatch. That makes sense.
Yes.
And I know what I'm looking at.
Right.
But honestly, if I came across a Sasquatch bone, unless it was, looked like an elephant bone, I wouldn't know would I know what I was looking at?
I'd be like, that femur bone might be a little too big.
Yeah. I'm not giving to the Smithsonian. I'm running away with this.
Right. I'm just going to tuck this in my coat and I'm going home with it. For later, of course. Yeah. Because it's just crazy. But I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
At different places where we found bones. I don't know what
where the bodies, where the bones. Yeah. That's probably the most common, question. No matter where you go, whether you're doing a show like this, or you go to a symposium, conference, or meet someone somewhere, where are the bones? Where are the bones?
We would have found bones by now.
Maybe they have.
I was going to say, I think they probably have. They just didn't know what they were looking at.
No, I guarantee. Well, I shouldn't say I guarantee, but probably, yeah.
Probably. The probability is good, but still, I'm just like, with all the millions of billions of people out there, you should be tripping over dead bodies, leaving your driveway every morning, and you're not. So, like, and I say that who in here is a hunter? And you get a bunch of guys that raise their hand, and you're like, "Have you ever come across a dead body in the woods?" And they're like, "No." Well,
Yeah.
come on
Yeah.
now, man. That's just not how this works. It just doesn't work. It's not going to work that way. It's just not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people are kind of crazy, but
It is what it is.
I was just going to say that it is what it is.
Hey, upwards and onwards, you know.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
why I roll.
Well, it's been fantastic having you with us tonight, and I hope you'll come back someday.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Gwen.
And hey, you are welcome in Pennsylvania anytime.
Awesome.
I tell people that think I'm crazy, just come here and camp in the yard.
Well, yeah. It's funny. I won't mention his name, but I have a good friend that's with the Olymp Project, lives here in Washington. He's like, man, I think if I move out of Washington, for whatever reasons he's like, I think I'll go to Pennsylvania or Kentucky. And I've been to Kentucky, I've been to Tennessee, and I love those states. I really do.
They're awesome.
And I got family in Kentucky, but I've never been through Pennsylvania. I'm like, well, okay, if you move to Pennsylvania, now I really have a reason to go to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's the third in the country for Bigfoot sightings, supposedly. Yeah. See, Washington, California, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Sounds like a great trip.
So you're going to have to come out here. I'm actually going on a special trip in the Allegheny National Forest at the end of April for a guy who told me some very crazy stories, portals, UFOs, Bigfoot, inverted footprints that come up out of the dirt instead of sunk down in the dirt. Yeah, lots of stuff that I'm like, you got
your hands full with that one.
We're going to go check it out. There's 3 of us that are going to go. So we're going to film it too. So y'all get to see it. So
very cool.
Yeah. So I want to show a couple of things here that we have for everybody that watches everything that's going on. I'm a very busy lady and I never sleep. And the second issue of, I don't have it on here. Imagine that. Well, the second issue of Strange Knocks magazine will be coming out April 7th. You'll find them going out in the post office. And so be looking for them in your mailboxes, and they are now available on digital form on the website gotknockers.org. So get over there and get your subscription because it's pretty cool. We're covering everything, all of the weird and unexplained stuff. And then the only other thing I have, and I'll show you, we are opening a store in the local mall for all of your cryptid, UFO, unexplained needs. There are 5 of us going together to stock this store. There is going to be such a huge selection of stuff. So make sure you get down to the Susquehanna Valley Mall here in Pennsylvania. We're going to open up mid-May. So be on the lookout for that because we're going to have some grand opening stuff. It's going to be pretty cool. So, yeah. I'm always doing something, Shane.
I hear you.
I need to quit my job so I can just do this full time.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I win the lottery, then none of us are working ever again. So thank you for everybody that joined us tonight. I know I didn't get to everybody's questions or into comments, but the conversation was good. So we kind of just left her go. Michael Devaney, I will get a hold of you because I want to know about a couple of those. I'll just show it now. This Columbia County, actually, some of my research area is in Columbia County. So we'll need to talk about this Knob Mountain monster and Johnstown Mountain sighting. So yeah, get a hold of me on Facebook and we'll set up something to talk about it. Bonnie, I'm from Northumberland County, Pennsylvania, which is like right in the middle of the state. I'm an hour above Harrisburg, if you know where that's at. So thank you for joining us tonight, Shane. It was very good. I'm sorry that we took up an hour and a half of your time. It's usually an hour show, but we kind of just go with it. So
my pleasure. Thanks for the invite. And
it's awesome.
And a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you.
Yeah, it was awesome. Do you have anything going on that you're going to be doing? Are you going anywhere? Will anybody be able to find you?
Yeah, I'm always going somewhere. I'm doing a lot of, like I said, in the nest area right now. I'm doing a lot of, research with some of the OP members, just literally boots on the ground, just searching. If anybody wants to check out something kind of new that I didn't want to do, but now I love to do, is I got a new YouTube channel called Sasquatch in the Mist.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, Sasquatch in the Mist. And so I'm doing a YouTube. A lot of people wanted, for the last 10 years, people or a lot of individuals reach out to me to start a YouTube channel, and I just never wasn't my thing. And as I get a little bit older and it's hard to keep up with the Olymp project, so I decided, hey, I'll put together a YouTube channel and I'll update it periodically and take you out to the woods and we'll talk Sasquatch. And so check out Sasquatch in the Mist on YouTube. That's my new channel. There's a couple of videos up there right now. Nothing crazy, but just right now I'm kind of delving into it. But definitely you'll be out there in the woods with me and some of the other Olymp Project members. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And if it's something you're into, cool. If you're not, then don't check it out.
You'll have to send me something for that, and we'll print it in the magazine.
Okay.
Like a little advertisement for you. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Are you going to any events that anybody can find you at?
See, I've been invited to quite a few this year. So I got one in November, Sasquatch Summit. I'm invited. So I've been invited to Minnesota, Kentucky, Louisiana, and originally I could make most of those, and now I'm going to have to cancel most of those. It's very unfortunate. It's just life and business and everything else, and it's hard to do traveling, and you don't really make any money, so it's you got to go where the money's at, which is my day job.
Right.
I love to talk Sasquatch, and I love to meet people. I've done conferences in Ohio and Kentucky before, and Tennessee, and they've been a blast. I mean, I love them. I love meeting people. I've been corresponding for years, but it's hard to get to those events and the travel and the time away from family and job.
Yes.
So mainly what I'll be doing this year will be in Oregon and Washington, and there's a few events, and some of them I can't even remember off the top of my head, but there's 2 or 3 I'll do out this way. I try not to do too many as well, though, because it takes away from your time in the field. It really does. And it's great to talk about Sasquatch, but I like to leave that up to your Dr. Meldrums and some of those individuals, that can't get out to the field as much, but they are a wealth of knowledge. And so, and they probably have more business talking about the subject than I do. So, but I do appreciate the invites around the country and in my home states and whatnot. I do really appreciate it. It's just hard to make them. And I feel while I'm young and nimble, I need to be out in the woods and documenting and exploring, and who knows what you're going to come across, what you're going to document, record. And that's where my time's probably better spent. And then when I get to be up there where, I'm using a cane or a walker, and maybe I'll spend my time at conferences more often.
Yeah. We've taken a step back this year too, because the last 2 years we flooded the conference. I got asked to speak at a lot of places, and we sell the Got Knockers gear and all that stuff. And this year we took a step. I said, we're not doing near as many, because when you're out and you're visiting all these places, you're not able to do research. And I missed that part of it. So we're taking a step back. We're not going to near as many places so that I can get out in the woods. Yeah. I love to be in the woods.
Exactly. And that's my first passion. If there was none of this social media stuff and all that, I mean, that's where I'd be, and that's where I'm at. And I just want to keep to that, and I don't like regurgitating stuff. I don't mind doing, talking nests in a different state if no one's ever heard that, but I don't like to regurgitate, and I don't want to make that what the Olymp Project is known for per se, or just what I'm known for. We're a much broader organization with a lot of stuff. And I want to accumulate stuff. You won't see a book out of me anytime soon because the story's not been written yet.
Right.
I don't need to be an author yet. Again, asked to do that all the time, and I'm like, I'm not ready to sit down and write a book. I don't think the story's been written.
I'm writing a book, but has nothing to do with Bigfoot.
No, good. No, I owe the power too. I am
not writing a book about Bigfoot at all.
I want to write one book down the road, and just one book, if I ever decide to do that. But I wanted to be where I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, it's worth writing, and I just don't feel it yet, So, but power to those that write books and stuff. I love reading, and
absolutely
good for you.
I've got the library behind me.
Oh yeah, mine's over there. You can't see it, but yeah.
I'm that person that has to have a tangible book in my hand. I don't like to read a Kindle. I like to have a book. So everything I order, my husband's like, you could get that for free on Kindle, and I'm like, I don't care. I have to have a physical book in my hand. So
yep, I'm the same way.
Amassed this lovely library. Yeah. I've spent a lot of money in books.
No.
And I
wish
haven't
could
even
show
read
you
half
my-
of them. So
Yeah. I'm there too. Yeah. So
yeah, I just have them. So, well, thank you for joining us tonight. I
Yep,
won't take
thank
up any
you.
more of your time. You're getting a storm moving in anyway. So
Yeah, I got to get skedaddling here and go batten down the hatches. But I
Yeah.
appreciate it, Gwen. Thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation, and
yes, thank you
really
for
enjoyed
coming
my
on.
time. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.